All right. So, hi everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Mindgasms podcast. And I'm going to talk to Eric Hunley again today from the Unstructured Podcast, of course. And we're going to talk about whatever we have time to talk about. There's never really a totally set structure on here, other than maybe when I talk with Tim Keith philosophy, because we get really into the weeds on that. But what the topics that we have planned for, and I'm sure we'll get to the other ones next time if we don't get to them, are libertarians, culture, social justice, technology, inspiration, drugs, and prostitution. All very fun and not controversial topics at all. So, do you want to start off by introducing yourself to those people who don't know you, Eric?
Sure. Eric Hunley, I host Unstructured. As Andrew already said, I need to give him a minute here to imbibe, it appears. Andrew's got to get high to talk to me and watch his numbers collapse.
Yeah.
I met Andrew through Mixed Mental Arts. I've spent a little bit of time in there, and I have a group called Unstructured as well. And Andrew's probably my number one poster in there.
Yeah, I post a lot of stuff. All right. So you have a preference for which of those topics you want to start off with?
We could talk about any of them. As I was saying off the air, I am nowhere near as passionate about the subjects as Andrew. Andrew's especially like postmodernism. I mean, I'd like to think it was Andrew reads a book so I don't have to.
Well, that's good, I guess.
I had a guest on Jen Briney recently, and I like to say she watches C-SPAN so you don't have to. Same basic principle. So we can start off. Go.
Sorry, go ahead.
We could start off on libertarians if you want.
Sure. Yeah, I know. I think you and I might have talked a little bit about that the first time. I think we kind of had similar thoughts, like maybe both sort of have some libertarian values, but maybe wouldn't label ourselves as libertarian. And it seems like sometimes libertarians are kind of labeled as a boogeyman and they're seen as dumb or something like that. But that's sort of a caricature often of what they really are for the most part.
I wouldn't call them dumb. I'd call them Aspergersy.
That's a much better way of putting it. Yeah.
I mean, I consider myself a small L libertarian or a lazy libertarian because I don't believe in purity. And one thing you'll find as you look around the libertarian camp is a lack of women, for one. So if you want to be in a relationship, you're probably not a libertarian.
Yeah. Doesn't Jonathan Haidt, I think in The Righteous Mind, talk about how if you compare libertarians and liberals and conservatives, libertarians tend to be the most intelligent, but also the most socially awkward or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. I haven't gotten through The Righteous Mind yet. I did a happiness hypothesis. But in other interviews, he talked about how conservatives are controlled by disgust. Libertarians really have no disgust in a lot of ways, but they also can be seen as having no heart.
Right, yeah.
And I think that's a fair statement. I mean, if you take everything to a full exaggeration, you can see some of that in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. And like a few common things, I guess. Like we talked about this one last time, that libertarians tend to promote a lot, which is UBI or universal basic income. And I've been talking about that a lot more recently with the whole Andrew Yang and the Yang Gang thing with
Sure.
Andrew Yang, who's that presidential candidate. And what do you think about Andrew Yang and what he says about that?
I think he's a long shot candidate, like a modern Ralph Nader, who has probably no real shot in the world, but maybe he can start a conversation about things. I think he actually has positions on just about everything, which
Yeah.
is surprising. That he's probably doomed by as well.
Yeah.
I think his latest stance on going after circumcision, well, I don't necessarily believe in it myself, seems a little frivolous, like he may be pandering to Joe Rogan a bit.
Oh, I didn't hear about that one. What's his position on that?
Oh, he's anti-circumcision.
Oh,
And,
okay.
and I'm like, well, UBI or circumcision, which do we need to tackle first?
Yeah.
Loss of jobs and automation or circumcision? Wow. Now, sadly, which one will get more headlines? Probably circumcision.
Yeah.
But I see that as being a problem all around. So I don't know. I think he's got good ideas, or at least has ideas.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to commit either way on anything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting point about circumcision too, and about how he seems to have positions on a lot of subjects, because if you're if you're that way, it's more difficult to shift your positions to please people, which a lot of politicians tend to do, and might even be a
Sure.
good idea for a lot of politicians.
Yeah, I mean, it's personally something I despise, but then I don't usually vote for winners. So what do I
Right.
know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure.
I mean, I didn't vote for Trump. I didn't vote for Bush. And really the politicians who win often are the people who I least think should be in there.
Oh, yeah.
So I
Like,
feel like I'm somewhere so far in the middle that they're just not pandering to me. They go to opposite extremes. So they're, either the right or the left or whatever. And I'm just not in their net. Net. They don't really care.
yeah. Like like abortion should never happen for anyone anywhere, or abortion should always happen and be encouraged and be free for everyone always.
Right.
Yeah.
Both are a bit extreme.
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah, I don't have a stance on a lot of things, which of course makes me, in that squishy center, squishy side.
Yeah. Yeah, like I would say that's, I guess you could say, closer to the way I would describe myself. I do definitely have positions on a lot of different subjects, and like you said, I tend to be more passionate about them, I guess you could say. And but there's, I mean, if you look at the positions that I personally have, many of them could be considered left-wing positions, some of them could be considered right-wing positions, some of them could be considered libertarian positions. So that's why I consider myself a centrist, especially since most of the time, if we're talking about a political issue, I sort of kind of look for a compromise, like somewhere in between the middle of those two extremes. Like with abortion, for example, I think both of those extremes sound kind of ridiculous, and something more in between those two extreme ways of looking at the subject make more sense to me.
Or even coming from the side. I mean, I believe in innovation. Like if
Right.
you've heard of disruption, right?
Yeah.
Well, to me, sometimes you get so stuck that there's only two positions. How about a
Yeah.
third one? Well, to me, plan B is like a third position. I don't consider an abortion if somebody takes a day after pill. Yes, there are some who would say, sorry, that life has started. I'm kind of like, you know what, I'm okay in that. So if we could prevent the problem to begin with, then no, we don't have an argument on the other side.
That's for sure. Yeah.
So, and as far as politically going, I heard this recently and I really like it. And I wish I knew who said it, but rather than thinking left and right, I kind of feel like I'm more up or down.
Oh, yeah. Who was it who said that recently? I heard that from someone. I forget who it
I
was.
just heard it, and I really, really liked it because I kind of feel like, up is authoritarian and down is more of a libertarian or less authoritarian.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of, I'd say maybe slightly right and down.
Okay. Yeah. I think I think in that case, I would consider myself slightly left and down, I guess you could say.
Right. So we're in the same path, but I don't know. In general, I will lean toward less government if possible. I
Right.
feel that government is needed, but it should have to compete for its existence.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's more like it's more of a capitalist mindset in a way, if you think about it. And that's an important aspect of our democratic culture.
Right. It has to prove that it is an absolute necessity at that point. Then,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
maybe I'll sign on. But it should have to fight. I mean, I feel like every bill should be a bloodletting.
yeah,
I think everybody should be just barely walking when they come through. That it should be hacked down to that degree to where both sides are angry. And if everybody's angry, then we're probably looking at something that's appropriate.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it because, like you were saying, government is necessary sometimes, but you can easily see a lot of examples of government just making bullshit jobs for people to do. Like there's that book that I haven't read that I've heard about though called Bullshit Jobs, and and there are all sorts of different government regulations and rules that don't really make sense. Like I'm not like if you go to one extreme, you can go to what the anarcho-capitalists say and think that there should be no government and it should all be market. But I think there should be some regulation. But it's understandable that you can see this sort of thing getting just out of control to the extreme.
Right. A good example. Have you ever heard of the Tennessee Valley Authority?
No.
Okay. It was a program put forth in the New Deal.
Okay.
We had problems, so we put programs forth in the New Deal, right? To try to, and this is in America. I know you're international.
Yeah.
But FDR put forth the New Deal, came up with programs. 1933, Tennessee Valley Authority. So how long did it last?
When did it end?
It didn't. That's the
Oh.
point.
Wow.
So that's something you've got to always consider.
Yeah.
Anytime you build a program in the government, it becomes a freaking zombie.
Yeah. Like it's hard. That's a really good analogy. Like it's hard to kill. It's
Yeah, it's there.
it's there. You have to kill it if you're otherwise it's just gonna keep going around eating people. That's a really that's a really good analogy. That's a
Well, and
real like you can look at that as as a good as a good thing or a bad thing too, depending on what we're talking about. Like
true.
with alcohol prohibition, for example, once that got repealed, you're not going to like make it illegal for people to drink again. And I think that's probably the same case with here in Canada where weed got legalized federally, and once that happens, I doubt it's going to go back to being made illegal again.
Well, it's even though alcohol is legal here in the States, we do have blue laws in different areas. So a
Right.
town can decide on their own. Sorry, we don't sell alcohol.
Right.
You can't buy it here. So there is some flexibility on the lower locales. I don't know if you knew that,
I
but
didn't know.
you are right. There is an advantage that the government can sustain a program for a while. For example, we do like the internet,
Yeah.
and the internet was a program. I want to say 69 that was put forth by DARPA, and because it was a government, they had the budget and they could work with the universities, and they could. I mean, think about it: 69 to 50 years later now. So they could actually sustain it and build it out to the point where it's useful.
Right.
But we've got to be careful. One program will be a silly program, they'll never go away. Another program will be the internet. And, thank God for that. I mean, we're
Mm-hmm.
talking over it right now.
Yeah.
Now, one consideration as to why the programs don't go away is the incentives are screwy. And by that, I mean, okay, Andrew, your job is to run this program that we put into save the what's jiggers. And now you have saved all the what's-a-majiggers. Are you ready to move on?
No, because we have this whole infrastructure set up.
Well, you have a job. You got a
Yeah.
paycheck. You got a mortgage.
Yeah.
Excuse me? No, you're not going to say, oh, screw that. We're not going to do it. So the incentives are for you to not only keep your program going, but how are you going to grow? How are you going to get richer? How are you going to advance? Oh, wait. We need to create some regulations on whatchamajiggers. And you know what? We'll need another department to enforce the whatchamajigger. So I'm going to have to get promoted. So now I'm not only the whatchamajigger guy, but I'm the whatchamajigger inspection and also the whatchamajigger documentation head. And each of those three departments will have a head underneath them. So my bureaucracy has now grown.
Yeah.
And Andrew is ruling over three departments.
Yep. And I have a whole staff below me making sure that all of the rules and regulations get filled out to the letter too.
Right. So what's your incentive? Your incentive is to create more. A lot of this I've seen in the military too. We have a thing called end of year money. Fiscal year is about to end. We've got $20,000. Spend it now.
Oh,
You've
wow.
got to spend every bit of money you have. Why? Because if you don't spend what was budgeted to you, you may not get it next time. So
Oh,
we
yeah.
need to spend the money any way we can. And what is that called? Waste.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rather
It
than
can't
saying,
be the case that can't possibly be the case that maybe next year we need less money than we needed this year.
right, or we roll over some of the budget from this year to start off next year or whatever, or increase efficiency in the program because you know what, we're running like we're a profit-based thing. Government's not profit-based, and it can't
Yeah.
be. It's a completely different entity. So again,
Yeah.
it's needed, but you make damn sure that you absolutely have to have it, that there is no other option, no other, resort. I've
Yeah.
gone into it with different people. Like I've interviewed some FBI agents and people like that, and I just interviewed a border control ICE guy and talked about one of my beefs. Why do we have so many departments? Why do we have an FBI, ATF, Border Patrol, DEA, Secret Service? I'm forgetting somebody. Postal Inspector.
NSA, CIA, Department of Defense.
Right. So, but I
Yeah.
was just sticking with the law enforcement side.
Yeah.
Let's just
Yeah.
even. I agree. We should merge all of these things and have essentially an investigation federal arm that would be carrying the roles out of the FBI, ATF, Treasury, because FBI handles counterfeiting. So does Secret Service. So does other things. I'm like, why? Oh, you know why? Because all the little bureaucrats have created their own departments, and those departments have grown out of control. And then to protect themselves, they don't share information with each other. They don't move forward. They have to control their own budget, prove their own value, and essentially compete against the other departments.
Do you think it was that way from the beginning, or do you think that part of these problems that we're seeing are perhaps because these government agencies started off smaller and at least theoretically from the start were solving different problems and stuff like that?
Possibly some. I'd say that we've always known that there was going to be um, issues. I mean, this is known all the way back. I mean, like we talk about how vile the election of 2016 was, et cetera, how terrible. It's like it's nothing. Go look at the election of 1800 when they flat out called her mother a whore.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. You need to look that up. I mean, consider this. During that time frame, we had Alexander Hamilton, who was shot by the actual Vice President of the United States, Aaron Burr.
Yeah.
I mean, it is staggering how bad it was. And that was
Yeah.
what, the first election after Washington. So
Yeah. Yeah,
Guess what? These problems have been there. So you are right, maybe in some of it, like the postal inspector. We had the Pony Express, and I imagine that they needed somebody to focus on protecting the mail or whatever that's being transferred through there, and that seemed like a specialized item. Okay, that's fine. That still could be rolled in, but if it's rolled in, then we don't need a guy at the top, right?
yeah, yeah. That's a part of it too. Like, so so the government can have more control over more aspects of people's lives in a way, right?
Sure, they can. And again, the incentive is like, who's going to give up their post?
Yeah, no one wants to.
Right.
That's like one of the problems with the drug war too, which is that's actually one of the other subjects we were going to talk about. That
Sure. Go for it.
I bet you're aware that we did a book club chat on that book, The New Jim Crow, recently through Mixed Mental Arts,
I
and
saw it pass by. I've not read the book. I'm guessing that was partially covering how drug laws were used to help entrench racism, things like that.
yeah,
Okay.
it's it's a really it's a really detailed examination of how, and it's much less partisan than you would expect, because it goes through how both Democrats and Republicans have historically put these laws in place to strengthen the drug war, and
Sure.
that it disproportionately affects Black people to a huge extent, not even necessarily because Black people are do more drugs or even commit more crimes. It's more of that there's this sort of cultural mindset that Black people commit more crimes and stuff, even if but it's more that cops don't tend to go to like suburban neighborhoods where there are richer people, and of course there are Black people too, but they're perhaps tend to be more white people. So it's like this unintentional disproportionate dispro-
I,
discrimination.
I would
And
argue it's class-based versus race-based. And that's
I
one
would
thing I'm getting
say,
tired of is
yeah, I
it's
would say
always
I actually have made that point myself a few times too. It's at least much more class based than race based for sure.
and the reason why I say that is I grew up with family in a trailer park, okay? Trust me, the cops were there.
Yeah,
They weren't
yeah,
nice.
yeah,
So it really is, I think, a more class-based situation, and the elite, I'm not going to say that they are, racially pure. I'm going to say they just don't like the rabble.
yeah.
And by
I
the
would say
rabble,
so.
I mean garbage people in their mind.
Yeah,
And who are garbage people? Well, it's poor people. It's people who are gross. It's people who live in the trailer parks. It's people who
yeah,
are Southern. I mean, we have a big, big prejudice against Southerners in the States.
yeah.
Um, it, if you look at it, what kind of representation do they have for the average meth user? Do they show them as Black? How many Black meth users do you see in pictures?
I don't know. I don't know. But I mean,
It's a white deal. They're almost all white. They're all toothless white freaks.
and
Maybe
they're all
meth
poor
mouth.
people.
Yeah, and if they're not poor, they get themselves poor. I mean, drugs are a great way to get poor.
Yeah. Well, especially if you're talking about something like meth.
Oh, it's horrible. I mean,
Yeah.
it tears people up. And what I'm saying is that as long as you can keep the racism bit alive, then well, now we're worried about a group being picked on or not, or whether somebody's racist or not. It's like, wait, what are we really fighting here?
Yeah.
How about
We're
the laws
fighting.
themselves? Instead of just
Yeah.
saying this, is the law right or wrong? Are people dying? Yes or no? I have a cousin who is such a bad addict. I'm happy to say I've never met the guy because I probably wouldn't like him, but tore the siding off of his father's house to sell it for drugs. Okay.
Holy shit.
Last I heard, he's in prison. I'm like, well, good. Maybe he's safe there. Maybe he's getting clean. I mean, He's white. It's not, I mean, there is no, drugs. I don't think they pick on race. I think they pick on blood.
No, yeah, of course. Yeah. And they're like addiction, for example, there's no difference between race in terms of that for sure. Like the problem, like that's one of the, I think that's the last thing that I said at the end of the new Jim Crow mixed mental arts chat. I said, end the drug war. The problem is the drug war. Like for like one of the examples that they give in that book, the new Jim Crow, is that Obama spent $1 billion to reduce drug crime by 1%. That's fucking expensive and totally counterproductive.
Sounds like the war on poverty.
Yeah.
Ever look up those numbers?
No, I haven't.
I think it's like a couple $1 trillion to reduce it by 0.5%.
Holy crap. That's that's way more extreme. Wow.
And I'm just pulling those numbers out my ass, but I know that they're extreme numbers. So yes, legislating some of the stuff, no, it's not going to work. I mean, poverty has to be resolved by the people who are in it.
Yeah.
You cannot, same thing with the drugs. I don't believe that the drug situation can be resolved by a nanny state. I think it has to be the people themselves being able to pull them out and putting in programs maybe that'll assist. So my step is legalize everything and use that money immediately to have more programs for people to, fight addiction, advertise against addiction, everything possible, educate, advertise, treat, stop treating it as a crime and treat it as a health problem.
Yeah.
And focus then on ancillary things that are coming out of the same thing. We talked a bit on this with the guest I just had, the border control agent. And I was telling him, this is my belief, because there are other things going on like human trafficking. And that leads us to your prostitution angle. And having the drugs legalized and drawing a taxable income off of it, we could then turn the current law enforcement toward things that I really do care about a whole lot more, like human trafficking, like children that he mentioned were being picked up by sponsors and being used in labor camps.
Yeah.
That's a nightmare. So I don't really care if somebody, I mean, I do care. I'm sorry for their health, but if they're killing themselves on drugs, that's a medical problem and a choice problem, depending. And try to help them get the programs. Hopefully the community can help. But let's stop arresting them, because that's probably not going to help their problem. Because they're going to go to prison. They're going to learn new tricks like how to rob to get more.
Yep. And then they won't be able to get a job. They might not even be able to get a place to live. And then they might be put back in jail because they don't have a place to live or a job.
Right. Or they could be a junkie and maybe they'll work at McDonald's. Okay, so they're producing. They're paying some sort of tax, even if it's just sales tax when they buy stuff.
Yeah.
It's easy. I mean, either I'm paying for them or they're paying for themselves.
Yeah.
It's better.
Yeah.
And then keep all the law enforcement and we can really start focusing on things like human trafficking. Now, part of the prostitution angle on this is there is a big problem with human trafficking being tied in with the prostitution. And I'm a believer.
They're very different.
They're very different, but there's a lot of prostitutes who came out of being trafficked.
Yeah.
So we have to resolve that. We can't just say all prostitution is good and wonderful and pure, because there is a part of me that wants to legalize it, but I think it needs to be controlled and monitored.
Well, that's one thing that could happen if it were legalized. Like you could have, just like with drugs, you could have quality control. So if you have like a legal brothel, for example, you'll have legal prostitutes there and they'll have their whatever license it is that they need. Exactly. And they can do that. But then you go after the people who are in sex trafficking and the pimps and the people who are doing bad shit like that.
And go after them hard, because they still are going to exist. But yes, treat it kind of like the porn industry. All the porn stars have to get tested every so often. I forget the number of times, but they have to be tested. Check out okay. Clients can also be tested, which is good. And we can
Yeah.
also use some technology. See, I'm gonna poke on the whole list somehow or another, and
Yeah.
use the technology to track, like Yelp for prostitution,
Yeah.
Yelp for Johns, where the
Yeah.
prostitutes will then rate. Actually, I guess Uber might be a good comparison, right? You go for a ride, and then they rate each side.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, something like that, though. So you could be like, okay, oh, I'm not going to see her. She's a 3.
Yeah.
Or she goes, no, sorry, I don't have time right now because, you're an ass and you treated, my peers like garbage, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
should do all that. Let's get it on the up and up.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually talked to a prostitute recently, and like one of the things that she was telling me about is for one thing is that if she had gotten into the industry in a different way, she could see herself being in child trafficking and being controlled by a pimp and stuff like that. But because she went into the industry in a different way, she's an independent entrepreneur, and she's not controlled by a pimp, and she has a marketing plan. And for example, because she's independent, she can decide who her clients are. If there's some guy who makes her uncomfortable, or if he's an asshole and he doesn't treat her well, she's not going to sell her product to him.
Sure. Have you ever read Freakonomics?
Yeah, I love Freakonomics.
Yeah, there was a whole section in there about the prostitute who was I think a software programmer, and went out on her own as a high-priced call girl and made a whole business out of it.
Yeah.
And they went into the whole economical breakdown of what she did and things of that sort.
Yeah. Well, and like in today's world, with you, like we were talking about technology, that makes it a lot easier too. And like you can like if you're a prostitute, you can find clients through dating sites like Plenty of Fish or something, or Snapchat or something like that, and you can advertise through that. And it's
Sure.
it's easy to have like you can have a website with a menu of what you're doing and different prices and different time rates, and you can skip book availability. It's just it's the same sort of practices as a legitimate
I
business.
book podcasts, somebody else can book sessions.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and then there's the whole camming world. I had Rebecca Love on, and Jocelyn Stone both were on the show. They both do camming,
Right.
and they make a lot of money from that. So that could be actually a lead-in to where a cam girl can then offer an upsell to the private retreat.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea too. Like you can there are a lot of girls who do similar things in that way, and you can offer, like, if you go for this service, you can offer another one. Like there's like there can be the camming stuff, like there could be someone selling a premium Snapchat. Hey, if you like this premium Snapchat, do you want to meet in real life? That sort of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or not. Not, because it gives, there's a lot of options out there. And I think the more on board, the more creative we are, the safer it can be, the more people can be satisfied, and life can go on. I mean, a lot of violence, I think, comes out of frustration. I could be wrong, but I think that it may be the case.
Yeah, I would say so. Like if you're talking about, well, if you're talking about violence in general, really, it wouldn't surprise me if, well, unless you're drunk and you commit a crime of passion or something like that, which probably happens all the time. If you're going and committing a mass shooting, and you're sober and level-headed, or at least you feel like you're level-headed when you're doing it, a piece of that I'm pretty sure is almost always that you're a loner and you feel no connection with people around you, and you don't have a sense of community or even like friends who you can have meaningful relationships with.
That's the angle too of the Hybristophiles and the James Holmes. He actually proved it. I had an evolutionary psychologist on talking about that.
Oh yeah, I think I was talking to you about how I listened to that episode and I liked it.
Yeah. Now that one, it was Dr. King, Robert King, and James Holmes proved out that he could get women by his psychotic behavior. He actually has groupies.
Oh wow.
And they're called Holmesians. And
That reminds me of Charles Manson.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Except he was a little bit of a weenie that didn't do much himself. He just had others do it for him.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But yes, there is a pattern there, and the younger ones are sometimes doing it to attract. It's really obviously twisted. And then there's the other peak, which is men who are typically, well, I hate to say my age, but my age, who are kind of failures in life, going through a divorce, losing their children, whatever, and then raging against the world. So it's like those are the two forms of the shooters. And he's done a lot of research on that.
That's also related to what we were mentioning before in terms of the jobocalypse and automation causing people to lose their jobs. Like one thing that Andrew Yang talks about is about how a large percentage of the people who are losing their jobs are like middle-aged men who have been working as truck drivers or factory workers or something like that for their whole lives. And now what are they going to do? Like retrain themselves while they're already middle-aged? Or yeah, exactly.
So we can slide into social justice.
Yeah, that might get you banned from Twitter.
Label this video as such. But yes, that actually ties together with drugs as well, because a lot of opioid addicts are men, especially. And men, you know, my age, who let's say might be a truck driver and lose their job, or worked in a factory and lost their job. A lot of men, I hate to always, you know, I don't want to generalize everything, but it is proven to be true that a lot of men suffer if they feel like they are unable to provide.
Yeah.
And will sometimes seek escape through substances such as alcohol or opioids or drugs like that. There have been proven studies that show this. And the answer, the whole learn to code thing, we can slide into social justice, because I thought that was an interesting case where people were lashing back against journalists who, a lot of them meant well by saying, you know, they need to retrain to do something else.
Yeah.
And, you know, something like software programming and coding. Now there's a delicious irony in that statement, beyond the fact that the journalists themselves lost their jobs and people push back at them, learn to code. The irony is, I would tell you, don't learn to code, because AI can drive a truck, but AI can also code.
Yeah.
You know who else can be affected by AI? First-year lawyers.
Oh, yeah.
Because their whole existence is to research case law. Well, guess who can research case law really well? AI, because it all gets stored in databases, and the longer it goes on, the more previous law has been sucked in and sucked in and sucked into the databases. So AI can do it, and you can replace, say, a team of 10 lawyers researching with one lawyer and some AI, because they just need to be able to interpret what's coming out.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Like you could easily see that happening with a lot of jobs if you're doing that sort of analytical work, which could be done much more efficiently by an AI, I guess.
Yeah. What about CPAs? Couldn't AI figure out taxes and AP, you know, AP vouchers and accounts receivable? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So these are white collar now. So what about dentists? In China, they had a robot successfully perform some sort of dental surgery. I forgot what it was. Guess we don't need them, do we?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And like, as
pilots, do we need those? Could there be a drone setup? Well, why
yeah,
not?
they're good. Yeah. Yeah. And as always happens with technology, the price tends to go down as the products and then I guess they're sort of simultaneous sometimes. The products become much more widely available, and so it'll become more easier to do that sort of stuff that's already started to happen, like in fast food places, for example. There are the kiosks that you use instead of the people, and you do that at the grocery stores too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, one good thing I've seen happen, though, sometimes things shift where it's like, okay, yeah, this is affecting cashiers, but what's happening is because of Amazon and Whole Foods and stuff, Walmart and other stores are getting in the game of saying, hey, you call ahead and we'll have your groceries for you. So now some of the cashiers are almost like a reverse a stalker. They're pickers.
Right.
So some of those jobs I'm happy to see, I think, are shifting to where you're checking out your own groceries, but you're filling out online everything you need at the store. They are going around and picking it off the shelves for you and packing it. Then you come and pick it up. So that is a positive sign. So sometimes, things will just shift and we just do things differently or at a higher level.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want everything to be bleak.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. They're like like you were saying, the way things are done can just change instead of all the consequences having to be negative, like you were saying.
Right. And we have gone through other periods that were, seen as disastrous and we came out okay. So I haven't gone down completely on the jobocalypse side or the other because I think we're in the middle of it. And it's hard to see the other side of it when you're in it.
Yeah, that's true. It's hard to see. It's hard to see like the broad picture of what is really happening in the world until you look back on it from a historical perspective. Often, I would say.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's other things too, like 3D printing is just getting amazing. I think that's going to affect the world too. Like if you can 3D print your auto parts, well, then now we don't need a warehouse, do we? We don't need to go to Advance Auto or whatever to go pick up a part.
Yeah.
We could just go and pick it. Advance Auto may just be a 3D printer sitting there. You stand in line and you send the design, or you take your part and it scans it and makes a duplicate of it. Boom. There you go. So how many jobs will that affect?
A lot.
Yeah, it's going to affect a lot of jobs, but then on the same token, it'll make things so easy and convenient for you. Like imagine all the houses becoming modular by a basic design. So everything is 3D printed. I mean, the lumber, the material, your walls, it's just robot, it's assembled and then boom, and you put
Yeah.
it back up. Even plumbers could technically be replaced because you just pull out the plumbing module and you put in a new module and then boom, 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 it's sealed. You're done.
Yeah.
But at the same token, it may cost us next to nothing to live.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point too. Like that's another aspect of what you were saying in terms of there being pros and cons, not just all cons.
And on the good note, our population is dropping rapidly. So our
Yes.
population maybe can work at the same time to help sustain it. And also, maybe through this technology and progression and population shrinkage, we can solve some of the environmental concerns too. Like
Yeah.
instead of
Yeah.
governmental programs, technology and creativity may actually be what resolves it. Like it's just cheaper to go get that car that does better, or we're not really driving around as much, or the cars are all self-driving. So we're not emitting a bunch of emissions into the air because the cars are continuously on the road.
Right. Yeah, that's a good idea, man. I unfortunately have to
So
stop
wrap it on that.
now, but yeah, this is great. we should definitely do this again. And yeah, we covered a bunch of or at least some of the topics that I wanted to cover, and basically sort of alluded to the other ones. So we could talk about the other ones next time, and I'm sure more, and hopefully have more time next time too.
Perfect. We solved the world's problems in 40
Yep.
minutes.
Yep. We talked about libertarians, drugs, prostitution, and the jobocalypse and all that sort of stuff.
Technology, social justice.
Yep.
There you
Yep.
go.
Okay.
No inspiration, though.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I'll say what I always say at the end of my videos there, and then you can offer any plugs or last words. So thanks everyone for watching another episode of the Mindgasms podcast. Hope you enjoyed this as much as I did, and thanks so much to everyone who shares this video and subscribes to my channel, and especially to those of you who contribute to me on Patreon. Really appreciate that. And like I always say, I love you all. Keep being the tiny beam of light that shines through the almost impenetrable darkness in the universe. And most importantly, always remember this: the funk cures all. All right, keep having mindgasms, everyone. And any last words there?
Just
Eric,
go
or
to
any plugs?
unstructuredpod.com.
All right. Okay. All
Thank
right.
you.
Well, adios until next time, everyone.
Later.